The best way to predict your future is to create it. Abraham Lincoln. The new year 2026 has just arrived, and although everything around us may be changing, many of us still feel stuck with the same old challenges. You may have endured long, exhausting days, faced failures, or sometimes felt small amidst countless opinions, arguments, and pressures. Sometimes, just one sentence can keep you up all night. A minor conflict is enough to disrupt your peace of mind. But if you pause for just a moment, you'll realize, even in those very moments, you still hold the power to control yourself, to choose your response, and to maintain agency over your own soul. Stoic philosophy doesn't promise that you'll avoid all hardships. Stoicism simply reminds us that peace does not come from controlling the outside world, but from controlling ourselves in every thought and every reaction. And in this year 2026, there is a very simple Stoic habit, yet powerful enough to elevate you, help you avoid getting stuck in chaos, and reclaim tranquility from within. Stay until the end of the video. I'll share exactly what that habit is and how it can help you stay calm and clear-headed in the face of any challenge. Afterwards, you'll have the tools to start 2026 more proactive and resilient than ever. Imagine an early morning at the start of 2026. You sit alone in your kitchen, coffee still steaming in your cup. The light outside the window is gentle, but there's something unsettled within. Last night, you argued with your wife over something truly trivial. Who would take out the trash, and who should drive the kids to school on Friday? The discussion dragged on into a debate about fairness, about who is carrying more of the load. That night, you went to bed with your back turned, your heart heavy as stone. This morning, everything on the surface seems calm, but you know a thin scratch remains in your mind. If you've ever found yourself in such situations, you are not alone. I have been there too, and so has my friend, Evan. In truth, anyone can have days when they feel like a small boat on a vast sea, easily rocked by the waves of trivialities. What exhausts us is not the grand events, but the accumulation of nameless, small conflicts, bit by bit. There is a profound paradox in Stoic philosophy that I once heard from Epictetus. People are not disturbed by things, but by the view they take of them. When Evan confided in me about his life, I realized the problem didn't lie in the events themselves, but in his reaction to those events. Evan is the breadwinner, a dedicated office worker, always expecting himself to shoulder and handle everything. But the truth is, sometimes he feels drained, and that only makes him more sensitive, quick to anger, easily drawn into petty arguments. After every confrontation, Evan asks himself, "Why do I lose control so easily? Why can just a passing comment keep me awake at night?" That's also something I used to ask myself. And then I realized, if we keep living this way, being dragged around by our emotions and our reactions, we will lose what matters most: our inner peace, our self-respect, and even our relationships with those we love. That's the price we pay for lacking self-control, days passing in anxiety, joyful moments replaced by awkward silence, and a growing sense of guilt day by day. It turns out that maturity isn't about controlling the world, but about controlling yourself. No one can hurt you unless you allow it, and no one can bring you peace unless you first choose peace for yourself. I remember clearly one evening when Evan told me about a stressful work week. That day, he came home late, dinner was cold, and his wife was exhausted after a long day caring for the kids. The moment they saw each other, another argument sparked, this time about planning the family's summer vacation. Evan sighed. I really acted impulsively. Just a small reminder, and I snapped. Sometimes I know I'm overreacting, but I just can't help it. I regret it as soon as I speak. I asked, do you ever find yourself calmer? Evan replied, yes, when I go out for a walk. Just being alone, breathing deeply, with no one reminding me, no one arguing, my mind gets reset. That's usually when I look back and see, none of it was that important after all. This is the very first step of self-control, pausing, observing, and acknowledging your emotions. Stoic philosophy doesn't force you to suppress your emotions, but teaches you to realize emotions are simply the result of subjective judgments. A statement, a situation, it's just what it is. Our reaction is what gives it weight. You might ask yourself, is this really that important? If I react harshly, will things actually get better? If I stay silent or gentle, what do I lose? You'll often find that most arguments aren't worth sacrificing your peace of mind. We grow up surrounded by thousands of voices. Men must be decisive. You have to defend your point. Don't be weak. Don't back down. But in truth, self-control isn't weakness, nor is it giving up. It's a conscious choice, a decision not to let yourself be swept away by things that aren't worth it. Self-control is standing your ground in the smallest challenges, knowing when to step back before reacting, choosing calmness over outbursts, and understanding that nothing is more valuable than your own peace and that of your loved ones. Once, Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." This quote emphasizes that pain and anxiety don't actually come from outside circumstances, but from the way we perceive and assign meaning to them. The important thing is, you always have the power to change your perspective, to let go or adjust your response at any moment. This is the very root of self-control, mastering how you feel and react, instead of letting external events dictate your mood or emotions. Evan and I tried a small exercise together. Whenever an argument or negative emotion arose, we would remind ourselves, wait, is this within my control? If not, is it necessary to react? At first, it really isn't easy. You might feel as though you're losing when you stay silent, or being overpowered if you don't defend your opinion. But after just a few times, you'll realize that when you choose not to engage in trivial conflicts, everything around you quiets down, and you yourself no longer feel so exhausted. One evening, after a long, stressful day, Evan told me he chose to stay silent when his wife complained that he forgot to buy milk. I just listened, didn't respond at all. At first I felt a bit annoyed, but then I suddenly felt relieved. No arguing, no explaining. After a while, it passed, and my wife calmed down too. Both of us were at peace. No one felt like they lost. No one won. It was simply that no one felt hurt anymore. That is the power of self-control. Fewer reactions, fewer opinions, fewer arguments. And because of that, you have more energy for what truly matters. A warm meal, a peaceful evening with family, or just a few quiet minutes for yourself. The journey to self-control isn't a straight path, nor does it have a clear finish line. It's about repeating small choices, choosing silence over arguing, stepping back instead of jumping into conflict, letting go instead of holding on to things that don't belong to you. When you practice this long enough, you'll find that you're no longer so easily swept away by life's storms. Stories like Evan's will no longer be exceptions, but your new habit. You'll find yourself steadier, lighter, and truly in control of your own life. If you've ever felt like Evan, each day a small battle with yourself, each night replaying what you said or did wrong, try pausing for once. Let things pass without needing to judge immediately. You'll see that most of what exhausts you is what you allow to control you. You might miss a few chances to argue. You might be seen as yielding, timid, or without opinions. But you know, the cost of preserving your own peace is always far less than the price of letting yourself be swept into every emotional storm out there. You'll have more time for meaningful things, more energy for the people you love, and more respect from your own self. And there's something curious. Once you start mastering self-control, you'll discover a new layer of challenge in your daily life, facing hundreds of opinions, judgments, and endless debates that lead nowhere. This is when I want to invite you to continue the Stoic journey with me, to the true power of having no opinions. I used to think that as a man, I had to be firm in my stance, defend my opinions to the end, speak up and set things straight whenever something didn't sit right with me. But the older I got, the more I realized arguing doesn't make me any happier, and trying to win a meaningless debate ends up costing me a lot of time, energy, and sometimes even relationships. If self-control is the first step to inner peace, then reducing opinions, letting go of the need to judge, to be right, to debate is the way to maintain that peace. I remember one time my close friend Josh and I had lunch together. He chose a salad I'd never found appealing. In my mind, the thought popped up, that dish looks so strange. Why not just order a burger like we always do? But I stopped myself from making my usual comment. At that moment, I remembered the phrase, "Don't yuck someone else's yum. Don't ruin someone's enjoyment just because you don't like it." Josh looked pleased with his choice. And as for me, I simply shared the lunch in peace, without saying a word. If I had made a teasing remark, or tried to educate him about my food preferences, the mood would surely have shifted. It might have been just a small joke, but I know such things add up, eventually making people feel awkward or even avoid each other. Small things, but so real in everyone's life. I've also found myself in endless debates, spending hours defending a point that didn't really matter. Like the time my wife and I argued over what color to paint the living room. She liked cream. I preferred a cool gray. After so many arguments, both of us just felt exhausted. And the room, well, it still wasn't painted. The strange thing is, the more we argued about trivial things, the more I felt I was moving away from the real purpose to build a happy, peaceful space, not to win or lose over a paint color. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself in Meditations, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." I often think about this every time I want to pass judgment or give unsolicited advice. You'll realize most of our opinions about the world are projections we put onto it, while the world just goes on as it is. Just because I find a dish unappetizing or a hobby not cool doesn't mean it's wrong or bad, and it certainly doesn't mean I have to voice that opinion. There's a Stoic principle I really like. If it doesn't cost me my health or my possessions, it's not worth worrying about. This means, if it doesn't take away something truly important, a friend, a peaceful meal, a good night's sleep, I can just let it go, not turn it into a personal battle. In fact, the power of having no opinions isn't about being indifferent or cold. On the contrary, It's a conscious choice to preserve your energy, your serenity, and your respect for others. I've learned to observe more, listen more, and when there's nothing necessary to say, I choose silence. At first, I thought this meant I lacked conviction or was boring. But after practicing it many times, I found life got much lighter. You can try observing yourself at family meals, in office meetings, or simply when scrolling through social media. Each day, we face a flood of hot topics. Who's right? Who's wrong? Who should live this way or that? Then you realize most debates don't actually change anything. The world keeps turning its own way. The only thing that changes is your mood, and it's rarely for the better after you've shared your opinion. There was a time an old friend posted something on Facebook that I thought was ridiculous. In the past, I would have jumped in to argue, to correct, maybe even prove I was right. But now, I just read it, scrolled by, and asked myself, does this really affect me? If not, why let it take up space in my mind? So I let it go, like so many other posts. That day, I felt much lighter, no irritation, no wasted time. The philosopher Epictetus once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." If we cling to our opinions, always assuming we're right, we leave no room to listen, to learn, or to understand more about the world. The power of having no opinions isn't abandoning thought, but letting go of the ego that wants to control others, to shape the world in our image. I've realized that when I pause before rebutting, allow for silence or a smile instead, not only do my relationships improve, but I also feel more at ease. Meals become warmer, conversations less tense, and I no longer carry the weight of unresolved debates into my sleep. The price of always needing to have an opinion is the loss of inner peace, of harmony at home and at work, and sometimes of your own self. The more you argue, the more you try to convince, the more tired you become, the further you drift from the peace you've always sought. Conversely, when you choose to let go of unnecessary battles, you create more room for meaningful things, for affection, for creativity, for quiet acts of kindness that need no recognition. Since I started practicing having no opinions, I've found myself more patient with things I can't control, like the weather, my children's preferences, co-workers' behavior, or odd things I see online. I've realized every time I let go and don't need to win every time, I truly master my emotions, maintain my calm, and also respect the freedom of others. Maybe you're thinking, if no one had opinions, wouldn't society be boring? That's not really the case. Stoicism doesn't tell you to ignore injustice or stay silent in the face of wrongdoing. It simply reminds us to focus our energy on what we can control and not waste our strength on pointless fights. If something impacts dignity, justice, or a core value, you should still speak up. But most of what annoys us daily, a comment online, an odd dish, a different viewpoint, isn't really worth sacrificing our peace. Sometimes having no opinion is the strongest choice. It's a sign of maturity, knowing which battles to fight, knowing when to let go, and knowing you have nothing to prove to anyone. As the philosopher Epictetus said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. If you want to try, start with small things. Next time someone shares a quirky hobby, listen and smile. When someone says something you don't agree with, ask yourself, is this really important to me? If not, maybe I can just listen and let it go. You'll find yourself lighter, and your relationships will become more genuine and simple. You don't have to be right in every debate. You don't need to have a solution for everyone's problems. What you really need is peace of mind, a quiet space within to recognize what truly matters. When you let go of what's unnecessary, you make room for empathy, for listening, and for genuine connection. Try a day of no opinions, and you'll find the world lighter and your own mind more open. And if someone asks your secret, just smile and say, "I mind my business," and that's enough. After learning to control yourself and recognizing the power of not always needing to have an opinion, you'll notice something else. Life, though less stressful, is still full of suffocating moments. These are the times when your mind feels like a cluttered desk, where worries, thoughts, ideas and emotions all jostle for space, none giving way to the other. You know you should master your emotions. You know you don't have to argue about everything, but there are still days when just a phone call, a text, or even a passing thought can leave you in turmoil. So, what's the next solution on this journey? Surprisingly, one of the most effective Stoic tools to upgrade yourself in 2026 is a habit so simple it's almost hard to believe: walking. I know it may sound a bit old, but pause for a moment and reflect. Think back to the last time you stepped outside, just to walk with no particular purpose. Not hurrying to the parking lot, not rushing to catch the train, not counting every step on a noisy gym treadmill. Just a short stroll around the neighborhood, under the trees or the open sky, sometimes with nothing but your own thoughts as company. I used to underestimate walking. I thought it was just something you did on busy days, a backup activity when there was no other choice. But then I read about Søren Kierkegaard, the 19th century Danish philosopher, famous for his daily walking habit. Kierkegaard once wrote in a letter to a friend, "Above all, do not lose your desire to walk. Every day, I walk myself into a state of well-being and walk away from every illness." For him, walking was not just physical exercise, but a way to walk through his mental struggles, sorrows, and tensions, each step bringing him closer to peace. I started to try it out myself. That first day, I just walked around the neighborhood after a tiring day at work. At first, I carried all the chaos in my head: unfinished tasks, unanswered words, lingering emotions. But the more I walked, the steadier my breathing became, the city noise faded, and my mind felt tidied up. Everything naturally receded, became smaller, less important. When I got home, I felt I had walked out of my initial tension, my mind restored to a simple, light state, clear enough to handle the rest of the day. You might ask, can walking alone really change anything? In fact, this is how you create an essential psychological distance from your daily issues. Walking lets you leave behind frustrating spaces, creating a pause before your emotions overwhelm you. Seneca once wrote, "We should take wandering outdoor walks so that the mind might be nourished and refreshed by the open air and deep breathing." The ancient Romans believed that to have a clear mind, your body must first move. It's a very basic principle. When you're not boxed into a pressure cooker, your mind becomes freer, more flexible, and less controlled by petty annoyances. I also recall a time during the most stressful week of the year when I unexpectedly received a troubling email from my boss, a questioning over a minor mistake I genuinely hadn't noticed. Normally, I would have sat down at my desk, typed a reply, my mind spinning with self-defense. Why blame me? I tried my best. But that day, Instead of staying cooped up, I just grabbed my jacket and went outside. It was a bit chilly, each breath visible like smoke. I started walking, no phone, no music, no podcast. The negative thoughts still followed me like a shadow, but the farther I walked, the less scary they became. Each step let me switch channels in my head, observe my emotions without getting swept away. Walking didn't erase the problem, but it gave me enough distance to see it was just an email, just one small issue among hundreds of others. I told myself, this doesn't cost me my health, doesn't cost me my possessions, isn't worth losing my peace. When I got home, I could respond to that email calmly, without resentment, without defensiveness, just clearly and rationally. A regular walking habit opens up even more. It's time to reflect, to let creative ideas develop just as Kierkegaard experienced. In fact, many writers, scientists, and great thinkers had this habit. Charles Darwin walked daily around his sandwalk in his garden, calling it his thinking path. Virginia Woolf wrote about her long walks that helped her untangle difficult chapters. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "All truly great thoughts are conceived while walking." Newness, creativity, clarity often don't come at the desk, but from gentle, free steps. But walking is even simpler than that. You may not write books or do research, but I'm sure you've felt it, just leaving your usual space, walking alone. It's easier to regain your balance, or sometimes just to breathe easier. In this era where everyone is glued to screens, deadlines, and constant notifications, giving yourself daily walks is a conscious act to reclaim control over your inner life. Some days, when the weather is beautiful, walking is a joy. On rainy days, I just put on a jacket, a hat, and walk under the wet trees. Strangely, I never feel like I'm enduring anything. On the contrary, each time I realize the deepest Stoic principle: accept reality without letting it rule your emotions. If it rains, feel the cold, the wetness, the sound of water. If it's bright and sunny, let the light wake you up. Every situation is just a situation. Your feelings are your choice. You can combine walking with little daily tasks, calling family, attending an online meeting when you don't need the camera, or simply walking the dog around the house. You'll notice this movement makes every conversation lighter, every thought clearer. More than once, I've untied a knot for a tough problem just by walking outside for 15 minutes, while hours at the computer led nowhere. Walking is a habit anyone can start. No tools, no skills, no complicated schedule required. It doesn't force you to think big, nor to solve everything at the root. It's just a small, simple, but powerful act. You can choose to walk when you're angry, stressed, or simply when you need to refresh your mind. It's the pause you need to disconnect from outside chaos and reconnect with yourself. On my most exhausting days, I just remind myself, let's just go for a walk. No goal, no pressure, and I've never come home feeling worse than when I left. As the saying goes, I've never come back from a walk and been more upset. Every step is a chance to restore peace. If you find yourself stuck in 100 thoughts, if a trivial story can drag your mood down all day, if you want to make a truly practical change in 2026, try a week of daily walks, even just 10 to 15 minutes. No goals, no achievements, just time for yourself, for your mind to reset. You may not solve everything in one walk, but day by day, week by week, you'll find yourself steadier in storms, calmer amidst irritations, and clearer each time you have to make a decision. You'll learn how to walk away from your troubles instead of sitting with them forever. The most important thing is, walking reminds you that you always control how you live in this world, no matter how chaotic it is outside. Start today, just a lap around the block, just a few minutes for yourself. That's the next step on your Stoic journey, a journey where each step brings you closer to the peace and inner freedom you're searching for. Every time I finish a walk, usually when the day is fading or the city lights begin to glow, I always feel that I've returned, not just returned home, but returned to myself. Perhaps, as I've shared before, sometimes a small act like walking is the simplest way to remind us of self-control, of our ability to master ourselves amid the chaos of daily life. But the journey doesn't end with an occasional habit. When we pair this intentional action with Stoic thinking, we create a steady way of living that fits any modern context. I know most of us are busy, pulled by hundreds of tasks and countless voices from society, family, co-workers, and social media. There are days when you've barely gotten out of bed before you're swept into the grind, messages waiting, deadlines looming, a meeting just added to your schedule. Peace and mastery can feel like luxuries. But I want to tell you a simple story. I witnessed a story that could be anyone's. A man was living in the suburbs, working in an office almost an hour's drive from home. He had a family, 2 young children, and a small, lovely house with a backyard. Every morning, he woke up early, checked his phone, skimmed the news, and then hurried to get ready for the day. He wasn't special, not a lover of philosophy or fitness. He was simply someone trying to balance work, family, and himself like millions of other men in the world. But there was something different. He tried a very simple ritual, walking every day, regardless of the weather, even if just for a few minutes around the neighborhood or in his garden. At first, he saw it as a light exercise to stretch his body, to relieve back pain after a day at his desk. But then he noticed something interesting. Whenever he walked, especially in the late afternoon or early morning, his mind settled down. The petty frustrations like arguments with his kids over homework or work stress he hadn't solved slowly faded away. He began to combine the walking habit with practicing Stoicism. He'd remind himself, when stepping outside, to leave behind all judgments, plans, unnecessary comparisons. One day, his boss harshly criticized him in a meeting. The resentment and wounded pride weighed on him all day. In the past, he'd come home and bring that frustration to the dinner table, to his wife and kids. But instead, that day, he quietly walked a lap around the neighborhood, allowed himself to feel the anger, but didn't react impulsively. He asked himself, "Does this frustration help me get better? Can I control how others treat me? If not, what do I need to do now?" The answer was always the same, simple but steady. The only thing I can control is my attitude, my actions. The rest, let it stay out there. Over time, he trained himself to observe emotions like an outsider, not to judge or react quickly. The interesting thing is, the more he practiced, the more he realized that things that used to upset, provoke, or offend him weren't that important after all. He focused more on what he could actually control, caring for his health, his family, and working with a calmer and clearer mind. I asked him, "Are there times you almost lose your temper, but walking helps you calm down?" He smiled. "All the time. Sometimes I have to walk 3 times a day. Each time is a reset for my head, not running away from the problem, but looking back calmly. What's really important? What shouldn't come home with me?" In Stoic philosophy, Walking isn't just movement, it's an opportunity to temporarily detach from emotional reflexes. It's when you can ask yourself the core questions. Is this feeling really necessary? Is this worth trading my peace for? What can I control? If you answer honestly, you'll find most of your anger stays because you allow it, not because life forces it on you. Imagine an evening. After dinner, he walks a lap around the neighborhood. The sun's gone. The wind moves through the trees. Sometimes he thinks about a work problem, teaching his kids, or a minor disagreement with his wife. He doesn't try to fix it right away, just lets those thoughts drift by like clouds. Sometimes, mid-walk, a solution comes to him, or he simply feels lighter. Practicing Stoicism in modern life, it turns out, begins from the smallest things. A step, a breath, a decision not to judge or argue over trivial matters. Anyone can do it. No need to wait for the right circumstances or more free time. If you're busy, try pairing walking with daily routines. Call a friend while walking, take a virtual meeting as you move around your yard, or just stroll with your kids or dog after dinner. Every day, you can set Stoic practice goals with 3 simple actions. First, walk at least once a day, no matter how short. Don't pressure yourself with achievement. Just move. Let your emotions escape from the closed room of your mind. Second, focus on not judging small things. When someone does something you don't like, or a little thing annoys you, pause, observe your feelings, and ask, is this really important? If not, let it go. Third, use walking time to reflect and plan. When you're not lost in opinions and judgments, your mind has more space for creativity, for new solutions, or just for true rest. I've noticed that when we combine self-mastery with walking, we slowly build an inner safe zone that stands firm no matter what chaos comes from the outside. Calmness is no longer something distant, but a natural state that shows up more often, especially during hard times. What I most want to share, and I believe anyone can try, is that Stoicism isn't a philosophy only for great thinkers, nor is it just for talk. It's an art of living simply, beginning with small acts, repeated over and over, until they become second nature. You may not be able to avoid all storms, but you can always choose how you face them, with a slow step, a deep breath, a smile instead of an argument, a decision to let go of what's out of your control. The result isn't a perfect life, but a mind that's steadier, clearer, and more effective at problem solving. If tomorrow you find yourself swept up in a petty debate, try standing up, walking for a few minutes, and breathing deeply. If something irritates you, ask, is this really worth trading my peace for? And whenever you feel everything is out of control, remember, true control always starts within. The Stoic journey in modern life is not a destination, but a path repeated each day through small acts, every non-judgmental choice, every reflective walk. You'll find yourself growing, not because you've changed the world, but because you've learned to master yourself in every circumstance. That's how a simple Stoic habit like walking, choosing not to judge, or focusing on what you can control, can upgrade your whole life, not just in 2026, but for years to come. A simple Stoic habit, like walking every day, can become a powerful tool for mastering emotions, reducing needless opinions, and maintaining calm in a modern life full of pressure. When you combine self-control, letting go of minor arguments, and taking time to walk and reflect, you'll find your mind clearer, lighter, and your relationships more harmonious and meaningful. Stoicism isn't a distant theory. It lives in each small daily choice, each step, each time you choose silence over arguing. If you truly want to feel the power of Stoic philosophy, join the daily walking challenge starting tomorrow. Just set aside a bit of time to walk, listen to yourself, and observe the world around you. After each walk, don't forget to check in by commenting below with your feelings, experiences, or anything you notice on your journey. Let's build a Stoic practice community together, and maybe your story will inspire someone else. If you found this content helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next videos on the Stoic journey. See you again soon for even deeper topics ahead.